Hello, everyone, and welcome to Family Week with the Kelsey Museum of Archaeology. We are going to kick off our Family Week where we're focusing on self-care, health, and wellness in the ancient world with this awesome family-friendly tour. We will be recording this presentation so that folks who were unable to attend will be able to view the recording on our YouTube page later this week. If you are uncomfortable having your image on the video, it will only show up when we are in this kind of gallery view, but feel free to turn off your camera. But please do, we have you all muted at the moment, but please do participate, unmute yourself to talk. Your face will not be on the recording. So without further ado, I will turn things over to our docent for today, Krista Alberton.
Yes, hello everyone. Let me share my screen for the presentation.
So who's the host here?
So yes, hello, my name is Krista. I am a docent with the Kelsey Museum, and today I will be leading the tour related to ancient health and wellness, self-care in the ancient world. And also, just as Mallory went over, I just want to quickly go over Zoom rules. So like she said, you guys are muted all right now, but during the tour, I will stop and ask for your thoughts, your reactions to different questions. And you're more than welcome to unmute yourself then, or if you don't want to, you can put your thoughts in the chat. I do have the chat pulled up so I can see. Also, you're more than welcome to use the participants tabs to raise your hand or things like that, just to be as interactive as possible and to try to recreate the gallery experience. Yes, exactly. Okay, yeah, somebody just did it. Wonderful. All right, so let's get started with a beautiful view of the Kelsey Museum. So is anybody here a first-time visitor to the Kelsey? If you want to raise your hand in the participants section if you're a first-time visitor, or maybe no one's a first-time visitor.
I think I've went to the museum, but I haven't actually done this recording thing on Zoom before. So it's a first-time experience on the recording thing, but it's not a first-time experience at the Kelsey.
Wonderful, awesome.
I learned about ancient games.
Okay, yeah, great. Okay, so to those of you that are new to the Kelsey Museum, the Kelsey is dedicated to advancing the understanding of the ancient Mediterranean world. The museum's namesake, Francis Kelsey, was a Latin professor here at the University of Michigan in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And he built a teaching collection of archaeological items related to daily life. So this included things like lamps and pottery and tombstones that he used in his Latin classes, but wanted to extend these teaching methods throughout the university. So we still use these types of daily life items in our modern displays and teaching methods here at U of M. And within this tour, I'll be introducing you to how these daily life items connect to health and wellness. Also, I'll be introducing you to some of the various galleries and geographical regions that we have represented within the Kelsey. Also, finally, after the tour, I'll be going over where on our website you're able to find all of the fun activities we have planned for Family Week, so you're able to participate in them throughout the week. So I'll do a share screen of the website and show you exactly where to click, how to download things and things like that. And then also I'll be around to answer any questions you have about the presentation, about the museum, or about Family Week. So before getting into some of the specific objects we're going to talk about today, what kinds of broad themes or ideas do you think about when you hear the phrase health and wellness in the ancient world?
I can't think of any. I mean, health as in health, health as in being healthy, but what was the other one?
Wellness.
Health and wellness as in being okay to being able to live, actually.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Basically.
Does anybody else have any thoughts of things that they think about when they hear those words? think of what people ate. Yep, that's great. Okay, that's wonderful because that is one of the huge things we're going to talk about today. So I've divided the presentation into three main categories. First off, just general wellness, which does have to do about like how people were able to like live and to like exist. And then actually the second is going to be medicine and spirituality. Yes, somebody just said medicine people had in the chat. Okay, and then baths and sports/Olympics. So that fits in great because then the third category is actually going to be sports and games. You'll see where baths fit in this, but we'll get to that as well. So we're going to start with the category of wellness and specifically food, because food forms the base of our health and wellness because it gives us all of our energy and is the source of our general well-being. So the food items that we see on this slide are from the Roman Empire. So I just wanted to show you guys a big map of what the Roman Empire looked like at its peak, because it did encompass the entire region around the Mediterranean. The specific food items that we're going to be talking about today are actually from Roman Egypt. So they're from this region in Egypt called the Fayum, which is a super fertile region where they were able to grow lots of crops and where lots of people lived because they could survive there, and specifically the town of Cronus. So Cronus was an Egyptian village that was excavated by the University of Michigan and an archaeological team sent by the university from 1924 to 1935. And its objects actually make up 45% of the museum's entire collection. So that doesn't mean 45% of what we have necessarily on display, but of the entire collection that we have both on display and in storage. So examples of items we have from Cronus include things like doors and palm fiber sandals, games, which someone mentioned that they learned about earlier. And one huge thing that we will be talking about today is specifically the food. So looking at these food on the slide, is there anything that you recognize as something we might still eat today?
Maybe the nuts?
Okay, which one do you think looks like nuts?
Probably the top
This one?
right one, the one with the biggest checkers.
Yes.
The world's largest chessboard.
Yes. Anything else? Does anything else look familiar?
I don't eat many nuts, but the bottom, the left one sort of looks like the bottom left one looks like steaks or something. Are they steaks?
This one?
No,
so
the top left one.
Oh, this one? Okay. Yeah, no. We'll get into what it actually is. It's not meat. Someone said this one looks like prunes. That's pretty close to what it is. I'll pull up the labels now. So this top picture is actually bread that's been like solidified and like stuck underground and like somewhat fossilized. This is like the pits of peaches, or it could be some other stone fruit, but we assume it's peaches. These are supposed to be dates. Oh, what'd you say?
I said, I was close.
Yes, you were close. These are supposed to be dried dates, which are very, very similar to prunes. And then down here in the bottom right-hand corner are actually like dried up garlic cloves. So in addition to what we see on this slide, the Romans ate things such as cabbage, onions, legumes, which are like different types of beans, greens, olives and olive oil, obviously, because they were based on like the Italian peninsula, vinegar, figs, pomegranates, and cheese. So specifically, one of the things that I did not mention in this list was meat, because interestingly enough, the Romans usually saved meat and focused that for special like ceremonies or different rituals and religious festivals, but it wasn't necessarily something that was a common part of their everyday diet. Additionally, in addition to like basic food, the Romans used something called garum, which is a fermented fish sauce that they put on top of their food. So you could think about it something like ketchup or mayonnaise or sriracha, but they put it on their food to add some sort of flavor. And then also there is archaeological evidence that the Romans used cookbooks and were interested in the different combination of ingredients. They weren't just interested in eating like their basic foods. They weren't just interested in eating the dates right after they were dried, but they were also interested in combining things and combining flavors. This week, as part of Family Week, you'll actually have the opportunity to recreate an ancient Roman recipe, per patina. We'll be posting a cooking demonstration and the recipe that you can follow along later this week on our website. So you could try one of the recipes that the ancient Romans potentially ate. Next, we'll be looking at a tool that's crucial to food production. It's called a mill, or in Latin, a mola. So this type of tool was crucial because it was able to turn the grains that were grown, so the wheat that was grown, into flour. Around 10,000 years ago, wheat was domesticated in the Middle East, and then it became a dietary staple as it spread throughout the entire Mediterranean region. So the Kelsey Museum is home to a stone mill from this region of Italy. Can you see on my pointer where it is? Looks like a vase, yes. So it's from this region of Italy near Pompeii, but we'll get into a little bit more about Pompeii later on the tour. But so this mill, you'll see that there are two huge stone pieces. So the top one is shaped like an hourglass and the bottom one is cylindrical. And the way that this mill was used to create flour was there were large sticks through these holes that you see here. And grain, the whole wheat germ, would be poured into the top of the cylinder. And then either people or sometimes even horses, depending on the size of the mill, were used to rotate this top hourglass shape on top of the cylinder. And the wheat would fall through and be crushed and ground into fine flour. And then it would fall down into this bottom part and be collected and be able to be used to make flour. So has anybody here been seeing a mill like this in action, specifically maybe on farm or an artisanal bakery or something like that, or even tried to make flour at home themselves?
Well, I've played a video game that has a windmill that turns wheat into sacks of flour.
Okay,
But
yeah.
it's not that mill, so I guess that's pretty much useless. I see someone says Greenfield Village has a mill. I did not know that.
Yes, I also didn't know that. That's great to know. Yeah, so the windmill technology was definitely a little later. And then there were also the mills that then later on relied on water power to run. Okay, yeah, we also have a grain grinder in our house. Yeah, that's wonderful. So something that we're having as part of Family Week is actually an activity that you'll be able to use some sort of nuts that you already have at home and recreate the flour making process at home, and then able to compare that and the texture of it to flour that you potentially buy at the store, because obviously now the flour production process is much more mechanized and they're able to standardize the size of the grain, but obviously with something like this stone mill you're not able to do something like that. Does anybody have any questions about the food that we looked at on the previous slide or the stone mill?
I have to say that all the stuff that was in the Roman food, we still eat today.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so all of those things are still readily available at the grocery store, in Ann Arbor, wherever you are. They're not something that's necessarily now just stuck in the area around the Mediterranean, but they're dietary staples for people all around the world.
So so you put the grain into the top of his head, and then he grinds it out in his nose, and then it goes down into his mouth, and then he chews it up and puts into his stomach, and then you harvest from his stomach basically the stone dude's poop.
Yes, that's one great way to think about it. I've never thought about our stone mill like that. But yeah, that's definitely a way to think about it. For those of you that have also been to the Kelsey, if you remember from our entranceway, we have a huge stone container that also is potentially something that you can the flour would have been collected in. That's similar to this. That is a big stomach, I guess, essentially. Does anybody else have any other questions?
How much does it weigh?
Yeah, it weighs like tons and tons and tons because it is all like solid stone. I think it says, yeah, it's volcanic stone. So yeah, it's not something that we can just like lift up and carry. It takes nowadays like modern like forklifts and stuff to be able to move this mill around. Hence why the people that pushed it were very, very strong, or they even sometimes used horses. Yes. Okay, yeah, Mallory just said several hundred pounds. I don't know. Mallory, have you had to try to move the mill recently? No, into Kelsey? Okay, that's good to know. All right, so now we're going to move away from talking about food and talk about another key element of wellness, hygiene, which somebody mentioned earlier in terms of baths, which is great because we're going to see specifically talking about the Roman baths. So seen here, we have two images that would have been in murals in Roman bathhouses. Roman bathhouses were communal bathhouses where people went not only to clean themselves, but also as an opportunity to network and be involved with your community. So you can think about like that element more similar to why somebody would go to a YMCA or a rec center or something like that in order to be more connected to the community. Men and women went at different times to bathhouses, and in addition to like the basic rooms of like baths and like bathrooms in the bathhouses, there were also sometimes meeting rooms, sometimes larger like amphitheaters, sometimes libraries and things like that. So they were definitely more community centers. Roman baths are also now known for their absolutely beautiful decor. So two elements that made up this decor were mosaics and frescoes. So a mosaic is a tiled design that's made by putting a bunch of smaller tiles together in order to form like a huge design that were used either on the floors, on the walls, or the ceilings of Roman bathhouses. Frescoes refer to a specific type of painting process where paint is applied to wet plaster on the wall, and it gives it like a specific type of look and texture and feel. So here we see two examples of what could have been painted in a bathhouse. Does anybody want to take a stab at like what they think they're seeing in going on these pictures, or what they think could be depicted through them?
I think the red one is like a dolphin, but it looks like there's something coming out of him, and he looks like he has an eyebrow, so he looks sad, kind of. And the top one sort of looks like a sea monster with another dolphin chasing him, and there's like a baby dragon almost in front of him or something.
Okay, yeah, and then somebody in the chat said that there's a fish, that it looks like some sort of fish or sea monster, and a catfish. Yeah, these are all super, super good guesses. This is, I'll pull up the label. So this is actually, it's referred to in the label as a sea lion, but it's also known as a leocamp, which is like an underwater lion. And we can tell that because it has like the head of a lion, but the tail of a serpent of some sort. And then the smaller fish next to the leocamp and down here are all supposed to be some sort of dolphins. They look a little different than the dolphins that I'm used to seeing today, and but yeah, they are definitely some sort of fish creatures. In addition to these items and images being associated with generally the theme of water and like baths, they're also usually associated with either the Greek god Poseidon or the Roman god Neptune, who is the god of the sea, earthquakes, storms, and horses. So it definitely makes sense that the ancient Romans wanted to have this sort of water imagery and the imagery of their sea god depicted in the bathhouses. As part of our family week, we actually have an activity up that you'll be able to make your own mosaic design based off of some of these Roman bathhouse designs. And you'll be able to learn a little bit more about hygiene through our Match It game, where we have images from a bunch of these different themes put together, and you'll be able to play a memory game with the cards. Before we move on to our second topic of today's tour, does anybody have any questions about the Roman bathhouses or what we see here?
If the Romans splash too much, won't those paintings get ruined?
That's a good question. Yeah. So they were definitely deteriorated by like the heat and humidity and water that occurred in the bathhouses. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure that they were repainted over time and as they were deteriorated in order to keep up the image of the bathhouses, because it was something important. It was like more of a status symbol, like how beautiful the bathhouse was for the community.
Huh. That does make sense. That makes sense. It's like, oh no, my painting. I better fix it. Delete.
Yes, exactly.
And also, why does it seem like there's little bubbles in there? Like, especially on the top one. Why are there like white spots here and here?
Like around the edges?
Yeah, right where your mouse is pointing. Good
Yeah,
job.
that's a great question. I would assume that that's just from like wear of like being like rubbed down over time from friction. And also these pieces were removed from like the walls of like an actual bathhouse. So like when they were removed and like they had to like cut out the edges, it probably took off some of the top layers of paint to reveal the stone underneath. I don't know, Mallory, if you know any more about the process. Yeah. Of when they were moved. So yeah, it's likely from that moving process of removing them from the bathhouse walls to actually be in the Kelsey Museum. Does anybody else have any questions? No? Okay. So next, let's talk about the second topic of today's tour, medicine and spirituality and its connection to practices in health and wellness. So first, we're going to talk about something called protective amulets. But before I talk about this protective amulet on the slide, does somebody have like a small object that means something special to them, potentially like a special stuffed animal or piece of jewelry or something that then means a lot, something special to you, and you view it as like a protective symbol that they want to share with the group? Yeah, Henry says thumbs up. Does anybody have something specific they want to share with everyone? No? Okay, I have something I can share. Oh yeah, Mallory said any good luck charms. Something that I have is I wear this ring every single day, and it's specifically called a Latvian strength ring, and it's something that I wear as more of like a good luck charm and something that helps me feel better every day. Oh, somebody said they're going to get one. Okay, someone said a red stuffed dog. Yes, exactly. I'll wait maybe a second to see. Did someone go find the one that they were went to look for? Can't find it. Oh, that's okay. Okay, so something that was common in both ancient Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia were these things called protective amulets. So they were amulets that were worn from protection and treatment for various illnesses or for spiritual purposes. On the slide, we see a protective amulet with an Egyptian mythological figure known as Chnubis, who was a solar deity. We know that also from like the rays going off his head. And interestingly enough, Chnubis is somewhat similar to the Leo camp we just looked at because he has a lion's head and some sort of like serpent tail, but this tail looks more like a snake tail than like a fish tail, like we just saw. So Chnubis is specifically associated with different sort of stomach ailments. So if you're having a stomach ache or different digestive issues, you might go to a healer for a Chnubis amulet, or if somebody else in your household has one, and seek that out. So amulets were not just limited, obviously, to stomach aches, but they were used for all sorts of ailments and protections that people wanted. So things common were for pregnant women or newborn babies had protective amulets to protect their health and the spiritual well-being of them. Households as a whole used protective amulets, and then they were used for a variety of other purposes. Within Family Week, we actually have instructions on how you'll be able to make your own protective amulet with either a symbol from mythology or an important symbol to you. Does anybody have any questions about Chnubis before we go on?
Does he live on land or in a sea?
Oh, somebody found it. Okay, what is it? A wolf that's on your amulet? Kind of, it looks like maybe.
It's a coyote.
Oh, it's a coyote. Okay, nice, nice. That's wonderful. I believe Chenubis lived on the land, but I would assume that also based off of he doesn't have like gills or anything like that. Okay, so we talked about this is specifically more geared towards ancient Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia. So let's talk about how the ancient Romans went about trying to protect themselves when they got sick and look at anatomical votives, which means just like body votives. So if you were an ancient Roman that got sick or hurt, one option that you had in addition to going to like a medical healer was going to a temple of a healing god. Once you went to one of these temples, you could buy a clay or terracotta part of a body that was bothering you. So you could buy eyes if you had an eye infection or pink eye, or if, like me, your allergies are super bad and your eyes itch all of the time. Or you could get a foot if you had a cut that was infected on your foot, or if you had some sort of fungus growing on your toenails, things like that. But they weren't just limited to eyes and feet. They were made for every part of the body, from the tip of your ear all the way to all your toes. You could, whatever part of the body was bothering you, you could buy an anatomical votive for it. Once you got your anatomical votive, you would then take this into the temple of the healing god and give it as an offering to the healing god. Yes, I do believe they made organs, the ones that they had knowledge of, because something to keep in mind is that the Romans did not have an extensive knowledge of the human body like we do now, but I'm sure that they had some for basic organs that they knew about. So once you gave this offering to the god, you would then either spend the night in the temple or somewhere nearby the temple and hope that the god, the healing god, would visit you in your dreams and tell you how to get better and how to cure your illness. Some other reason that they would have been used as if somebody did recover from an illness, you could go potentially and buy the votive offering of the area that you recovered from. So let's say you broke your arm and your arm healed, you could buy an anatomical votive of your arm and give it as an offering to the healing god as a thank you for having them heal you. This week also, and it's similar to the protective amulets, we have a salt dough recipe on our website where you'll be able to make your own anatomical votive of your favorite either hand or ear or nose or something like that, in reference to the Roman anatomical votives. Does anybody have any questions other than, yeah, so we had the organs comment in the chat. Mallory said there were specifically hearts that were made. Any other questions related to the anatomical votives?
So I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. What happens if your hair starts falling out? How do you get hair? Do you just buy your Lego minifig hair or something?
That's a great question. So I know that there were anatomical votives that like were for like your whole head, and you could give something like that if you were balding. I'm sure there were also ancient wigs of some sort that people wore to try to cover that up, because I know that there's definitely archaeological evidence of that from Egypt, of like hairdos and wigs and things like that. So I'm sure that also spread to the Roman world, but that was less to like, that was more to cover up the issue than to like request the healing god to help you. That you would probably just give them like an anatomical head. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, isn't that interesting? Okay. No other questions? If you do have some later, we can come back to it. So let's move on to the last topic of today's tour. Specifically, is going to be sports and games. So first, we're going to be talking about the most basic of sports, athletic competitions, and specifically the Olympics. So the most famous athletic competitions that still occur today are the Olympics, and they originated in ancient Greece. Today, people from all over the world come together in both the summer and the winter to compete in dozens of different sporting events from people all over the world. In ancient Greece, more specifically, the Olympics served as a religious festival that brought together tens and thousands of people from the various Greek city-states. So you can think about how ancient Greece was divided as somewhat similar to how the US was divided into different states, but it was much smaller because these states were developed around a city, but then people from these cities would come together at these Pan-Hellenic or all of Greek games. So all free men, regardless of their job or occupation, could compete in the Olympic Games. However, it was usually soldiers that competed in the Olympic Games because they were the ones that were most in shape for the activities. You can think of these people are like obviously more trained and more fit, so they were the ones that competed. So the Olympic Games were not the only Pan-Hellenic games that the Greeks had. It was simply like one of the multiples that they had every year or every few years to bring together the Greek people. So also finally, the Olympic Games are called such because they were based in Olympia in Greece. Now talking a little bit more about the actual athletic competitions that happened at the Olympic Games, does anybody know or does anybody want to guess what some of the original Olympic activities were? So there wasn't anything fancy like bobsledding or anything like that yet, but does anybody have any ideas what some of the first activities were?
Maybe chariot racing, like racing as in going around track, see who wins, sort of racing, and also racing as in battling, where they just has to sort of like sumo, where they just go beep, and they drive towards each other, and they might go boom, or whoever survives wins or something, whoever is the least injured or something.
Yeah, those are great ideas. Okay, yeah, someone said discus throwing, archery, sword fighting, javelins, discus, long jump. These are all wonderful, wonderful suggestions because these are all were at least in some capacity used. I'm not 100% sure on the sword fighting, but I know all of the other ones were. So some of the basic activities that the Greeks engaged in were running, jumping, wrestling, chariot racing, discus throwing. Jumping included the long jump. I think there was some sort of javelin throwing. I'm not sure about soccer. I don't think that that originated in ancient Greece. Okay. Yeah, hammer throwing. So the hammer throwing was actually more similar to the discus throwing, because they would throw like pretty like weighted devices. It wasn't just like what we think of now with discus, but usually they were like lead or like more weight down. Yeah, so yeah, no soccer, sword fighting. So on this drinking cup that we see here, it's called a skiphos. We do see an example of the chariot racing. This type of chariot racing, there's multiple passengers. So this was likely not representing actually the Olympics. But in the Olympics, there'd be one or two horses pulling a free Greek man in a chariot around like a racetrack, what we think of in terms of like a car race, speed racing like NASCAR, or like a running track they would be going around in. Running was either short or long distance. That being said, as part of our Kelsey Family Week, we are excited that we are having a Kelsey Olympics that you and all of your friends and family will be able to compete in from the comforts of your own home. So every day there's going to be a different competition for you and either your family members or your COVID pod to participate in to learn about some of these ancient Greek sports. In addition to the sports, though, there is also another important part that comes into the game side of sports and games, and more specifically, the mind aspect and how you are cultivating your mind. Oh, Henry, how do I enter? Anybody can contribute. I'll show you on our website where you can find the instructions for the different activities in a few minutes. So we're going to talk about the like mind side of things through dramatic competitions. So dramatic competitions are festivals or activities where actors and poets competed to present either the best representation of a play or a poem. So these competitors acted out plays by themselves or they recited memorized poems. At the Kelsey Museum, we have a whole room actually on our second floor dedicated to this idea of theater through the god of theater, Dionysus, who's seen here reclined on the seat. So this mural fragment, like I said, is part of a whole room in the Kelsey that's called the Villa of Mysteries. The actual Villa of Mysteries is located just outside of Pompeii, Italy, and it was covered in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79. And the whole villa was covered then. A villa is just another word for a large house where a family and likely either their servants or staff lived. So this room was then buried in AD 79, but it was then again uncovered by archaeologists in 1909. And one of the things that they found was this fantastic room that had this beautiful red, gold, purple mural. Like I said, this is just one part of it. In 1925 to 1927, the University of Michigan, specifically Francis Kelsey, commissioned the Italian artist Maria Boscaro to recreate a watercolor version of the mural that exists in the Villa of Mysteries, and that's what we have on display at the Kelsey Museum. So we don't have the actual like mural that's in the house, but we have a 5/6 watercolor painting that was painted specifically for the Kelsey. The reason that Francis Kelsey wanted to do this was so that scholars at the University of Michigan and students at the University of Michigan, but also scholars just throughout North America were able to have access to this mural without actually having to travel to Italy, having to travel to ancient Rome, but they could still be able to learn about the same concepts. So let's take a few minutes and actually talk about what is going on in this fabulous mural. So if you guys have been looking at it, if you need another minute to look at it, that's completely fine. But if you want to mute yourself, just talk about what do you see going on here? What do you see that the people are doing? I would love to hear some of your thoughts.
Is it that guy right below the guy who has his head on the crazy looking dude who's vomiting into that bowl?
Do you mean this guy? Or this
No.
one that's drinking from the bowl?
Oh, he looks like he's vomiting into it.
I think he's supposed to be drinking from it. What else? Somebody put the laughy face emoji, yes. What else do you see going on in the picture?
I think that guy's, I see that crazy looking dude. What's happening with
That
him?
might be a
With
mask.
this?
Yeah,
His
what's
head?
that?
Okay, so this is actually not supposed to be like the head of like a decapitated person or anything like that. It is supposed to be a dramatic mask that could have been used by an actor or a poet to emulate some of their emotions. The reason that it's shown in this mural fragment is because Dionysus, like I said, was the god of theater, and in theater you would use masks like this to emulate some of your emotions. So usually they were either like the super happy masks or the super sad masks. So people far away from the actor were able to still see what they were doing because there was no such thing as like binoculars or like video cameras to zoom in on the actors' faces. So they would wear masks like this to help show some of their emotions or to show a different type of character, because you'll see that this one has like a beard. So somebody, if they didn't have a beard, they could wear a mask like this to show the character. Yeah.
Makes sense. And what's going on with the? I just want to like move things along here. So I want to be assisting, move things along, so we get every part assessed. What's that guy lying down with the staff over him for? What's that?
Okay,
do?
yeah, so that's supposed to be Dionysus, and in the mural this is like one of like the central like parts of the mural. So it's supposed to have just Dionysus kind of like lounging, potentially taking in the theater and like festivities going on around him, and this is his staff. Yeah, something else you'll notice is that both Dionysus, this man here, and on the staff there are these leaves that look like ivy leaves. That's because ivy leaves were associated with Dionysus and theater, and then were given out as ivy crowns to the winners of these dramatic competitions. So ivy crowns were given out for winners of dramatic competitions, and paper laurel crowns were given to the winners of the Greek Olympic competitions and other athletic competitions. This week we actually do have an activity that you'll be able to make your own paper leaf crown for the winners of your Kelsey Olympics. Is there anything else that's like major that you guys notice going on in the picture, or anything with like the colors or the design of the mural?
I notice one thing, and I want to put something with annotate on there and then erase it.
They won't know what you mean by that, honey.
There's an annotate option where you can draw.
Only they should probably be drawing on the picture.
And there's also it looks like, is there another guy behind Dionysus or something?
Yeah, it does look like he is definitely like laying on someone. So yeah, I wanted to point out what was going on in this like top corner up here, because you might be like, why is the picture cut off? Why can we only see part of Dionysus's head? Why can't we see what's going on above it? And that's because that's how the mural was found by the archaeologists. So Maria Boscaro repainted exactly how the mural exists in the actual Villa of Mysteries. So this portion of the wall was missing in the Villa of Mysteries. So that's like she chose to directly emulate that instead of like adding her own artistic interpretation into it.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. So did he just not paint or anything? Or did he just try and paint exactly what the gap looked like?
Yeah, so she tried to paint exactly what the gap looked like in the actual mural in the house in Italy. So that part of the wall either like fell off with like the volcanic explosion, or like it's fallen off from something else. So they painted it exactly as how it's shown in the real house. And the part of that is for archaeological reasons. In order to like better study it, it's best to have an actual interpretation of what the mural looks like instead of like the artistic rendering of it.
So will we ever know who is that person right above Dionysus? Will we ever know?
Mallory, maybe you wanna. Mallory knows a lot more about Dionysus.
We think that that is Ariadne, Dionysus's wife. So it's obviously a woman. You can see her clothing are clearly women's clothing. So we think that it's Ariadne.
Thanks for the advice.
Yes. Does anybody else have any major observations that they want to share or point out looking at this picture?
That guy looks young, the guy with the mask. Why is he holding the mask too?
Yeah, he definitely does look younger. He could potentially be an actor or helping an actor, or he could just be involved with like the festivities going around with the dramatic competition, so has one of the masks. Yeah, so he does definitely look younger. Something else I wanted to point out was that Dionysus lost one of his shoes. You can see that here at the bottom, that his missing shoe is next to him. I think that's just like an interesting, fun observation to point out. Any other observations anybody wants to share?
Did someone create that bowl? And wait, wait. What is that burly man looking at?
This man?
Yeah, that guy that you were pointing at before. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
What's he looking at?
he is probably looking at like what's going on in the other parts of the mural. I don't have them in the slides today, but there is like, so this is one wall within the mural, but there are things on like the other three walls. So he's likely maybe looking at some of the festivities going on in the other walls. On the wall that he's looking at, we think that there's potentially like people getting ready for like a marriage ceremony going on that he could be looking at, or something else related to that. So he's definitely interacting with like the other panels of the mural. Yes, okay, one other comment that I wanted to make was specifically related to the different colors that we're seeing here. So you'll notice that like the background is this rich red, there's green, gold, purple, rich yellows, and like orangey tones. So these are colors were likely like the pigments that were available to Roman artists, because these are common colors in Roman art. So I just wanted to point it out, like why these colors were used instead of every single color under the rainbow. All right. Does anybody else have any questions related to either dramatic competitions, athletic competitions, or anything else before I share my screen to show you where to find things for Family Day on our website? No questions? Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing for a second just to pull up the webpage. Okay. So you'll see here, I am just on the Kelsey Museum's webpage. So I just type in Kelsey Museum in Google and it pulls up our webpage. And when you're on our homepage, this is going to be like the front picture that you'll see, and you can directly click on this link that says that this week is Family Week. And at the top of this link, we have where it says navigate to the link to participate in Kelsey Museum Family Week. So all you have to do is click on this link and it'll open up the page that is home to all of the major categories of our activities. As you can see, we divided up our activities in a similar way to how I divided up the tour. So we have ancient wellness, ancient medicine, ancient sports and games, and then coloring pages. Under ancient wellness, once you open that, that is where the mosaic activity will be and the flower activity. And then later this week, towards the end of the week, we'll have the cooking demonstration up here. So that might be a fun project to try next weekend. And then under ancient medicine is where you'll see the protective amulet and votive offering activity. What you have to do is you'll see the parts that are underlined, and those are going to be the different links to the activities. So you'll find the protective amulet activity and offering activity with the salt dough. Under ancient sports and games is where we have first the match it game, which I hope you guys all check out, even if you're not interested in playing the actual match it game, because we do have more details about some of the items I talked about in today's tour, but also other items that are represented in the Kelsey Museum related to health and wellness. So you can read about those on our website. Under the match it game, and then if you keep scrolling, you'll see there's the backs of the cards and then the fronts of the cards, so you can print them out like double-sided to make the memory card game. Additionally, on the sports and games page, we have all of the instructions for the Kelsey Olympics. So some ways that you can participate are obviously just at home with your family and friends. Every day you can go through the different activities. But a way that you can be more involved with the community and how you're interacting is with your parents' approval, of course, is to share images from or short videos from competing in the different activities on either Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter with the hashtag Kelsey Olympics. So then we're able to see it, but also other people that are participating in the Olympics are able to see it. So you'll see that we have running, jumping, dramatic competitions, discus style frisbee throwing, and chariot racing under our Olympics. And then also you'll find the instructions if you just click on the link to make the ivy or paper laurel crowns for the winners of your competitions. And then finally, obviously, coloring pages was not a category on today's tour. And that's because under coloring pages, we have different coloring pages for all of the categories related to family weeks. We have ancient wellness, ancient medicine, and ancient sports and games. And in order to do one of these coloring pages, what you can do, you'll just click on it and it'll open the either PDF or JPEG of the coloring page, and you can download and print it, or if you wanted to just upload it onto like a tablet or an iPad, and you can color it digitally as well, while also learning something about some of the symbols and gods and goddesses represented in the coloring pages. Does anybody have any questions about where to find anything on their website or how to download something or anything like that? I can go through something again if I went through it a little too quickly.
I've got a question. What do I type in order to get to this place? I can't type that fast, so.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. So when you're just on Google or whatever your homepage is, you can just type in Kelsey Museum of Archaeology. For me, it autofills it because I go to the Kelsey website quite frequently. Or you can just type in Kelsey Museum and it'll probably show up. Let me know once you're there.
Yeah, Mom, could you type it in, please? Sure. Hold on. I'm moving you so I won't be able to see your face. So I only have 2 monitors, you know.
No problem. Yeah, so then once you see Kelsey Museum, you can just click the link to open our homepage. let me know once you're on the home page.
Okay, we're on.
Okay, great. So once you're on our homepage, you'll see like the big logo for health and wellness in the ancient world, and you can just click on like either the picture or the dates, and it'll take you to like the quote unquote event, because it's a virtual event. It just is running all week long, 12 hours a day, every day. And at the top of the event post, you will see the link that says navigate to, it'll have a link to participate in Kelsey Museum Family Week. And you will just click on that link and it'll open up the page with all of the different activities for Family Week.
Oh, you got it.
Okay. So oh yeah, this is it. This is where I got it.
Yes,
So
wonderful.
so you're telling me I could download one of those coloring pages and color it in professionally at Krita?
Yeah, so yeah, you can color in the pages, but also you can download all of the other activities on here and able to print them out, or able to just like use them on the computer, however is easiest for you. Obviously, some of the activities like the magic game have to be printed out in order to be used, but you can still learn something from like reading the instructions and intros to all of the activities, because they do go a little more in depth with like the specific themes like the bathhouses and things like that.
Okay, hold on. I'm going back to Zoom.
It's okay. Does anybody else have any questions navigating the website or how to download any of the activities or anything? No? Okay. I'm going to stop sharing. Does anybody have any final questions related to today's tour or to Family Week?
That I just have to say that this was pretty fun.
I'm glad. I also had lots of fun.
And it still doesn't make any sense how the amulet helps. So is it just a myth or something?
Yeah, so amulets, in like the frame of Western medicine, obviously like having an amulet doesn't necessarily like cure an illness, but it was more related to like the mythological and like spiritual value that the object had. So that's why I tied into the theme of like generally medicine and spirituality, because we do have to remember that the ancient people did not practice Western medicine like we do today.
Neat.
Yeah. All right. If there are no final questions, then thank you so much for joining us in our virtual Family Week. Thank you. Oh, yay. I'm glad all ages were interested. Keep a lookout on our social media for all of the different posts related to Family Week, but also related to the Kelsey Olympics. And again, feel free to share your posts with the hashtag Kelsey Olympics or hashtag Kelsey Family Week, so I can see them, Mallory can see them, and everybody else who's participating in Family Week can see your involvement. So yes, thank you for participating, and hopefully we'll be able to welcome you into the galleries soon again.
I know it's not safe to go, but I really enjoyed the gaming thing that I did in real life. So I have one thing to say for sure. This was not horrible. I'm just gonna put that out there. I will not give. There is no reviewing it. But if there was, I would not give this a 1 star. That's for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right.
Are they ready to go?
So are you going overtime? You can sign off.
Oh no, I'm good to stay on for a few more minutes if people have any last questions, or if you're done and ready to go, then thank you for your involvement. And we'll see you later, and hopefully see you at another virtual tour and in the galleries again soon.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much.
Bye. Bye, Dana.